Hey, Chris and Prime Roasters, welcome to episode 20. I know I snuck in there because Chris wasn't ready. He has his whole pre-show ritual that he's got to do.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
you can
your
do it
hair
in front
got
of everybody
longer.
if you like.
Yeah, your hair got longer.
My hair is crazy, you guys. I am out here in Winterland. Everything is super dry, and I look a little bit crazy today because my kids are they have the week off for winter break. So I'm in mom mode right now. This is what's going on. But I know we're not here to talk about that. You can roast me as a mom anytime you want. Plenty of time to do
That's
that.
cool. Although you're wearing the mom jeans today.
Oh, sweatpants.
Captain Sweatpants. There we go.
Man, I can't even tell you. But look, we have a very special guest with us today for this episode. Someone from my radio days, and that's Steve Abramowicz, joining us from Tennessee. And he is the host of Heartland Journal's podcast. He's got 3 million people following him. I'm so envious. I want to learn all about his crafts and skills and how I want to get like one person following me. I mean, that would be good enough, right? But he's also a music and movie producer. Now, I know the last time Steve and I spoke, he was involved in the film Reagan, which was a success in the box office. Thank you, Steve. And to his friends who produced the movie. Why don't we talk a tiny bit about that? And then I just want to see how Reagan's going and how your new podcast is going.
It's great. Thanks for having me on. Of course, welcome. I guess I'm welcoming myself back to your show. That's great. Reagan's doing fantastic. It just started streaming, so it's available now anywhere you get your streaming movies. And I'm very proud of it because I account for at least moving the needle. I can't say it helped Trump win the election, but it definitely moved the needle because it reminded us of Reagan himself, the man of his time. And Trump, was making the rounds as the man of his time, and we are now seeing the dividends of that. And so Dennis Quaid did a great job, obviously making the rounds, and it's actually very interesting. There is a service out there that ranks movies. You've probably all heard of it, Rotten Tomatoes. And Reagan now has the record, not just being of the guy who won the Cold War, but of being the most disparaging between Critics' Choice, way low, and audience choice, way high. So you can tell that system is rigged, just like a lot of the others.
We don't listen to the critics anyway.
We don't listen to the critics, but
we are the critics. Are you kidding me, Chris? We're Prime Roasters.
Oh, the critics were.
We should listen to ourselves. Yes, that's true.
They were wrong about that movie, and they were incredibly wrong about such great classics as Psychos in Love, my favorite movie of all time, at least my favorite horror movie my favorite slasher movie of all time, and my favorite love story of all time, Psychos in Love.
And the name of it and the name of the website, the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, they always give allusion to the fact that they were wrong about that one too. So just from the get-go, they were on the wrong foot. But bottom line is Reagan was a phenomenal film, phenomenal success, proved that Hollywood can make movies that people want to see if they try. And so definitely check it out on streaming if you can.
Oh, that's cool. You know who you should check in on streaming? Kathy Hochul, because like most Democrats,
screaming or streaming,
a little of both, because she had a hissy fit on a presser yesterday. In fact, as you know, Democrats, they never met a new tax they didn't like. And this was that whole thing about congestion pricing, or at least that's what they call it. I call it the driver's tax. You're charged an extra $9 now, $15 in a few years to go to Lower Manhattan, below 60th Street. That means even if you work there every day, you're going to be paying all of that. That counts. What was it? It's going to be $15 supposedly, the way they want this in 2031, I believe it is. That would be an extra $2,500 plus a year. Around that, $2,500 a year for commuters. That's a lot of money. Think about that. So the Trump administration said, hey, we're going to stop this. And the Department of Transportation issued a letter saying, yes, they did. So obviously, Kathy Hochul had to go out there and throw a huge hissy fit at a press conference. Let's take a watch.
The U.S. Department of Transportation emailed us a letter from Secretary Duffy announcing their attempt to end the congestion pricing program in the state of New York.
You mean the driver's tax? And by the way, watch this woman. Most of the time, this woman's teeth are clenched. every time she speaks. They unclench once, maybe a little bit later on in this conference, but the first maybe minute or so, clenched.
At 1:58 p.m., President Donald Trump tweeted, "Long live the king."
I like that.
I'm here to say New York hasn't labored under a king in over 250 years. And we sure as hell are not going to start now.
Well, I think we started right now. As a matter of fact, I think we have Elizabeth Bathory running the show here in New York. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen the fight between Hochul and Eric Adams and Trump. I mean, New York has completely blown up over the last 2 weeks, where Mayor Eric Adams may not be mayor anymore. I mean, that's because Trump and Pam Bondi went after Hochul, right? And Letitia James. I don't know about this one, Steve. I will tell you that I'm not sure if federal government should be messing with state issues. This is a state jurisdiction. I'm sure, our new transportation secretary can jump in there, but should we be doing that? I don't know if federal government should be touching this sort of thing.
Well, unfortunately, I think it has to be for discipline's sake, because they're rogue. They're running wild. I mean, Kathy Hochul wants to remove Eric Adams. She met with Al Sharpton, of all people, to get the progressive black sign off on it. Only reason for that is because Eric is black. Biden didn't like him because of his attempts to stop the outrageous funding of illegal immigration in the city. The city has, and loves and worked. Eric Adams was an NYPD cop. So the party hates cops. Remember the whole defund the police after they were all heroes after 9/11 and Giuliani being America's mayor and the Yankees winning. That's all patriotic American stuff. They hate that. The World Series and being proud. So liberalism isn't proud. It's envious. So maybe Hochul is jealous of Adams being a successful mayor where she's a failed governor. Letitia James and Alvin Bragg and Hochul all charged by the DOJ. So you got the federal government stepping in because they wasted millions chasing Trump and Trump enterprises like the Coyote after the Roadrunner. So even Mr. Wonderful, a beloved businessman in New York, Kevin O'Leary, he's a Canadian, by the way, said she's destroyed business for everyone, making up laws against Trump, just like JP Morgan didn't make money or want to do more business with Trump. And somehow that was a breaking the law. So if Trump did it, everyone did it. They didn't. And the court had to say so. So to your question, I think the federal government and Eric Adams, the mayor, are setting up this quasi-state versus federal civil war because Hochul is acting like a criminal.
You can say queen. You can say queen or
queen.
Dictatorette.
There you go. Perfect.
Or dictatorette. But this is a big issue. These are two big issues, actually. Immigration is a federal issue. It was a federal issue when they sent the illegals in and to these sanctuary cities and of course around there. New York was sending people out to the surrounding counties, as a matter of fact, too. So Eric Adams finally speaks up and incurs the wrath of the DOJ under Joe Biden. So Donald Trump says, yes, we're going to take that away because these are silly charges. All you did was speak up. Now Kathy Hochul is trying to flex her muscles. First off, she's really upset about this driver's tax being canceled. And by the way, the reason is the Trump administration did not. There was an environmental review that was not completed. So the Trump administration, when this was originally proposed, did not allow it through because there was no completed environmental review. Now the Biden administration rubber stamped the whole thing without the completion, and now the Trump DOT says, "Hey, can't do it because of this whole thing." And now, again, we'll watch this hissy fit because it gets even worse with her.
Fought. We stood up to a king.
Yeah, okay.
And we won then. And we were.
Gets better.
In case you don't know, New Yorkers, we're in a fight. We do not back down. Not now, not ever.
I mean, we don't back down when it comes to a new tax. We don't back down because the MTA couldn't manage their finances for the last, 3, 4, 5 decades.
Yep. Oh man, people are clapping for more taxes, you guys. Look, isn't that amazing that New Yorkers are like cheering for more taxes? Look, I was in New York just a few days ago, driving below 60th Street. I had to put on my, and I was driving weirdly. I had to put on my little toll on just so I can collect that extra tax every time I was traveling in and out of 60th Street. I probably incurred enough money to, I don't know, fly a private jet, right? So, but I will tell you, there's less cars on the road. So that means anyone who can afford to drive under 60th Street, well, go ahead. Why don't you? Because we've cleared the roads for you. And now you can pretty much park anywhere you want. Like that's never heard of in New York City. This is like just a downward spiral. So the garages are losing money. The commuters are jamming into these very, very dangerous subway stations and trains. And then you have those who can afford to skip all that. Well, they're just going to drive around in their, in their beautiful cars and park it anywhere. It's great for those with money. I mean, that's essentially what she's done. And those are the visuals.
It's very typical, right? I mean, if you don't want something, tax it, right? Tax something, you get less of it. So now people can't come in and go to the hot dog vendor, and now they won't go into the Yankee game, which already costs $1,000 for a family of 4, or they won't come in and do their dry cleaning or any of the small businesses because they can't afford it. Like you said, parking's available.
Yep.
So, and remember, where was the money going that they don't have, that they needed to tax things excessively to try to make up for the shortfall?
Wow.
But wait a minute. Kathy Hochul? Kathy Hochul's a fighter.
Who are we fighting for here? We're fighting for our residents, our commuters, our riders, our drivers, our emergency personnel. Life has gotten better, even those who have asthma, people with illness. That's who we're fighting for.
No. You're fighting for the snobs that don't want to share the roads with anybody else.
They can't even pay the parking to go for their asthma treatment. Who is she talking about? How many people that's a lot of, that's what, 10,000 people, maybe 1 million? And I mean, it's crazy to talk like that. I mean, let's remember, Emil Bove is the top prosecutor. He was at the Southern District of New York for a decade. And he dropped the charges against Adams. It wasn't Trump or her, it was him. And maybe again, she's helping him pave the way for Cuomo, because they all know each other's stuff for all that time. And Cuomo did leave under a cloud of scandal. And they got him on sexual assault, but he was doing a lot more than that. Don't forget the old people that went into the nursing homes during COVID. So wouldn't be the first time that this happened. And so I just think you're seeing in the Progressive Democratic Party of New York City, the sides are being drawn, and they're going to turn on each other because they don't have Republican politics there. Obviously, they're not going to have some Rudy Giuliani come in and become the next mayor or become the next governor and clean house.
Oh, either that or the fact that she's talking about saving people with asthma or breathing problems. No, all the congestion, all the smoke and pollution goes to the surrounding area.
The wind does blow to France. You're right.
Oh, France.
Well, she does blow a lot of wind. I know we wanted to talk about DOGE a lot, and yes, there is quite a bit going on. What was funny was the USAID, one of the chicks from USAID, Kristen Dry, was actually admitting recently to taking incriminating evidence. You know what? These guys just keep making things worse for themselves, don't they?
I watched some people get fired, and I thought it was just them, and it turned out it was 60 senior people for USAID, and I watched it happen, and that was just absolutely heartbreaking. People who've given decades of their work to this kind of this work. I mean, they've given their lives. And then it kind of went really downhill, and DOGE was in the building. We took down our pride flags. I took out any books I felt would be incriminating.
There you go, right there. She took down the pride flags, which, by the way, we talked about this. That's a socialist affirmation flag from the Democrats. That's their dog whistle. It's not about the gays. It's not about any of the alphabets. It's about saying, socialists, we have your back. And of course,
and if it was purchased with federal funds, that's a felony of theft.
Yep. And she takes out these incriminating books.
Incriminating.
What do you guys think was in the books?
I'm surprised she reads. Look, Honestly,
graphic novels.
isn't it like Christmas every single day since Trump's been in office? I don't know why. Like, why would you make a testimony using your phone talking about this stuff? Like, do they think like they're going to just put this on TikTok and we're not going to roast them? It is weird to me that they don't, think about their future. This woman clearly is going to have to apply for another job at some point, right? And like as the employer, you're like, whoa, okay, she steals flags and merchandise from her office, and and she clearly goes and rants online. So
these weren't the best and the brightest, Angie. I mean, you could tell that they were just filling seats with anyone they could get off the street that couldn't make it as a public school teacher, probably. I mean, she literally incriminated herself, so that's great. But there are people out there, you can go wild on even Twitter where they shouldn't be saying a word. A year ago, a gal was saying, yeah, I don't have a meeting today, so I'm sitting at home, and all of a sudden they called one and I threw on a hoodie. So here I am, doing this. So she's admitting she has a do nothing job. And then a year later today, she's saying like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. They've gotten rid of my job. What will I ever do? It's like, what job? You were getting paid for absolutely nothing. And you can look back to the job numbers that mysteriously disappeared at the end of Biden's tenure of 4 years, that they were basically stuffing the jobs numbers with do nothing jobs to make that look good, maybe keep the stock market up, maybe keep the economy looking good as they tried their socialist stuff. And it's here now. It's basically the point that DOGE is looking at and saying, wait a minute. One social security number was getting 1,000 payments, or people who are that would be about 360 years old. The Queen of England is still getting social security payments. Let's just stop that. And we could save a lot of money. And all of a sudden people are up in arms and they're protesting in 40-degree weather in DC saying, how dare you stop misallocating taxpayer money for nothing? Wait, that's not really a winning campaign slogan to say, waste our money. We like it more, please. So, and then this is my favorite. Who elected this billionaire? Well, go look at all the work that socialist George Soros and his son did during the 4 years of Biden administration. May have been actually running the government. Nobody elected those two billionaires either. So that's all. These arguments are just falling on deaf ears, but it gives Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid something to talk about at night.
It gives us a lot to talk about as well. I mean, they're basically confessing, right? It's like, oh, let's like give this list to the IRS, DOJ, like
here,
everyone.
Put the handcuffs on me.
Yeah. Here's my mailing address. See you in the morning. Right.
You know what? I think put the handcuffs on me was something she's probably said a few times beforehand, maybe to land the job. But all right, I'm just kidding. There we go. Ouch. Speaking of morons who protect DOGE and are saying anything they can to side with these corrupt lefty politicians that they've supported for too many years, Hanoi Jane weighed in. Yes, Hanoi Jane weighed in.
I used to do her exercise videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She looks like she has the same plastic surgeon as Bob Costas. I don't know what she's going for there, but isn't she starting to look like the never-ending story flying dog
harsh.
thing? I know, but she's 80-something years old and shouldn't really look like that.
All right. Maybe
yeah, all the hair and makeup in the world doesn't really do that effect. Maybe it's a filter.
Well, the filter should have been from her brain to her mouth. Here's what she had to say.
Man is cutting aid to the world's most vulnerable.
Yes, those 365-year-olds. Yes, I got
the
that.
people with asthma, right? That's
yep.
The shutdown of USAID is keeping food from hungry kids trapped in war zones and taking business from the American farmers who supply it in the process.
Oh, God, she knows absolutely nothing about politics or economics. Even my dog says she's rough. Anyway.
She was going door to door in Seattle for Kamala Harris, and I don't think it worked because she lost, obviously. And so Jane's been on the wrong side of history for a long time, ever since she sat astride the cannon there in Vietnam City. She's just a hack actress. Like we saw De Niro and the lot of them come out in favor of all the Avengers, come out in favor of Kamala Harris, when everyone in the country who actually votes or works for a living realized they didn't have anything. There was no substance there. So she's acting. She's reading a script. She's very good at that. She's had a career doing it. Her parents and her brother were actors as well. And so whatever Jane has to say, she's well past her 9 to 5 days when, she might have actually been funny. And now she's just a sad, washed up old actress who really shouldn't say anything. I mean, it's like Mark Hamill, right? The force is not with her.
Oh, we got Mark Hamill a little bit later on.
You.
Well, I
In
mean,
fact,
from Barbarella to what we're looking at right here, there's a big that you just should have stopped. I mean, I wouldn't wish her ill, like James Dean didn't live long enough to give us his political opinions, but hers have been wrong for a very long time, and yet they still trudge her out every so often to say what she thinks. And I think the country's kind of like, who are you again? Most of the voters today, they weren't around during the Barbarella days. The fact that I even know the title of that is only because I went to film school. Like she's just nothing.
that was her only positive contribution to the world. She's like a chick Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Well, they're all a little bit like that.
Less foul language, but yeah.
But remember, these were the original influencers before there was social media, right? These were the people that you supposedly idolized in the 80s and 90s. And I don't know, she's still, maybe she doesn't realize she's kind of like lost that.
No, she gets paid to do this. It's kind of
You think so?
It's a late term kind of thing. They don't do it for the goodness of their heart, and we saw that with like Beyonce for 3 minutes. She got $20 million, or some of these, like you said, they're influencers. They have followers. Taylor Swift. They don't need the money, but they'll only do it if it's worth their time, as they say. But it's what they say. It's the issues and topics that they're trying to remind people. And who are they exactly talking to? Is she talking to 65-year-old? Plus women who care what Bette Midler says or what the ladies of The View say? Or is she trying to talk to the young people like when she was hip and cool and she was an anti-war protester right there with Jim Morrison and the Beatles? And the answer is no, nobody. She's not talking to anybody. So when they come out and they do these things, it really just, I was talking to somebody very recently because I am a film buff. I do like films very much. They're ruining billion-dollar franchises by doing this because the Avengers have their own issues. They're still talking to kids, but they all came out in favor of Kamala Harris. But how can you watch a De Niro movie anymore? The great ones, Goodfellas, Godfather, Analyze This, all the ones, and Heat. We were watching Heat the other night going like, I just can't look him in the eyes anymore because he's such a toolbox. Like he literally did this. And so you see like a Michael Rappaport, similar movies, kind of a younger version of De Niro, this Bronxy, New Yorky, mouthy guy.
Yeah.
He did a 180. He's all, Kamala's wrong, but he was so filthy mouth and anti-Trump in the early days, wants to punch him in the mouth, all this just vitriolic, gross stuff. Somebody, I'm speculating, but somebody probably talked to him in management and said, hey, if you want to be relevant going forward, you probably should get on the other side because that's their poll-tested advice is that they actually like Trump. And it's true. He is polling at over 50% approval with 30 days in. So it's one of these things. Like you want to sell soap? Well, don't mess with half the country and tell them we don't want you to buy our stuff. Jane Fonda has run out of space. She's talking to 23% of the crazy people in Seattle who don't even have TVs and probably aren't on TikTok.
Just to be fair, it's not 23% of the people in Seattle, 23% of the crazy people in Seattle, which means even 77% of those don't listen to her. So that's important to note here. By the way, you did mention Mark Hamill, so I have to do this. He is a microcosm of the Democrat Hollywood left as we have right now. And just watch. This is a perfect example of what's going on. And by the way, what happened to those Jedis, huh?
She wants to be on TV.
We create worlds so vivid and stories so powerful that we lose ourselves.
What?
His pants are falling down.
They create immersive cinematic landscapes that feel alive, whether they're set here in London,
gotta get that in there.
anywhere your imagination can take.
Make an adjustment.
Create worlds so vivid.
Yeah, basically their pants fell down a while ago and they exposed themselves with the likes of Kamala Harris running for president and Joe Biden was sleepwalking for 4 years. It's been an embarrassment.
That's how good the actors in the audience are because they were able to pretend like it didn't happen while he's out there in front of a million people trying to do that. Or, there is the old scene from The Doors where Jim Morrison couldn't perform unless something was going on down there below the knees. And I don't think that's happening with Mark, but I think the force is not with him. This guy made his career as in a movie where he was in love with his sister. And now he's again traipsed out here. He went all in for Kamala. He went complete Dagobah, Yoda training for her. everything he said. I actually just posted something on him today because he had to turn the page. He hasn't posted since November 5th, by the way.
Wow.
If you look on his Twitter.
Wow.
So something happened on November 6th that he figured, And remember, they brought him out here. He was out there, one of the old actors who was in favor of Biden, like Harrison Ford, his co-star as Han Solo.
Right.
And they all lost. And so whatever they were selling, nobody was buying. And so there he is getting an award, trying to be relevant, and his pants falls down. So once again, showing his butt to the world that he's just not a Padawan anymore.
It's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. Wait. So in the same breath as like these guys with their pants falling down and Jane Fonda no longer relevant, and as you mentioned, like Robert De Niro and his stock falling along with his older films, do you think you're going to have like the likes of like Eddie Murphy or George Carlin? Do you think like they're now back in favor? Do you think like, because they had to go away for the Me Too?
Sadly,
movement.
George is dead, but he was the first host ever of Saturday Night Live. So we are celebrating the 50 years anniversary of Saturday Night Live, which reminds us how completely irrelevant that has become. That thing was so powerful. Chevy Chase was able to basically affect the election, like we talked about with the
That's right.
against Ford.
I'm going to argue against that one because he had the Nixon stink on him. He would have lost anyway. But yes, he said he affected the election, and he did try hard to portray Gerald Ford as a klutz. But the fact is, I'm sure he would have lost anyway.
Well, he was the most athletic president we ever had, but he was able to turn the perception. And it's all marginal. Of course, it wasn't like 51% of the people that voted for Carter said it's because of Chevy Chase. But the perception to this day, if you talk to people about Gerald Ford, they will think of the Chevy Chase character falling down on the Christmas tree because it's been shown over and over and over again because Saturday Night Live had relevancy. But during the whole Biden administration, they refused to touch it. Maybe one or two times with Dana Carvey, maybe one or two times with what's his name from Liar Liar? So,
exactly.
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, because they knew themselves, Lorne Michaels, who's 50 years, this thing has been going on, they knew the power of their own comedy or sending these people up could have an effect, and they did not want to hurt Biden's chances knowing his flaws, and so they held back on that versus say Jimmy Carter and Ford, say even Reagan, or the classic ones with Clinton, where they felt free to do that. So that's the change of the mainstream media, especially at NBC, over the 50 years of Saturday Night Live example. And so this anniversary reminds us of that, exactly that. Like, well, we can't talk too much about Belushi because that reminds us of his relationship with De Niro and Robin Williams. We can't talk too much about making fun of Clinton because he's still around and whatever. So, but we can go all in on making fun of Trump with Alec Baldwin, who, I stand behind his, Second Amendment rights, but I also stand behind him when he's going to
well, that was a slip, by the way. Love it. There we go. Hey, I watched this. I watched the special. Eddie Murphy was on it, but they did rely too much on their new cast. There were some pretty cool cameos, though, by the way. In fact, what I was happy to see was even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez showed up to do a little bit of a sketch.
That's her as a middle-aged woman. Is that the idea?
Well, she is obviously a girl you don't want to start a conversation with at any party. Let's just put it that way. But a guy you want to start a conversation with is J.D. Vance, who did a bit of roasting on his own. So let's check this one out. He was in Munich last weekend, and let's just put it this way. He really did roast those crazy people at the Munich Security Conference.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago, the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. As the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshair. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes.
And there we go. Basically, J.D. Vance says, you better get your values back because we're going to point out what you did and we have the receipts.
Not only receipts, we have the checkbooks as well, right? I mean,
NATO is at risk. Yeah, NATO.
Right, and they don't have any. They don't have that chick from the USA that takes out the takes away the incriminating evidence from their books. So you know.
And notice too, he's speaking in front of military generals and diplomats. And so what he's obviously pointing out is what we've always known, that America is exceptional because we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Europe has never had a First Amendment of freedom of speech. And so you can go back to the Nazis, although they jokingly tried to make freedom of speech about it when they were interviewing our new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. If you remember that during the week, that was a big thing. She said that the Nazis basically rose to power because of freedom of speech. But that's the point, is that we have Madison and the Federalist Papers. They never had. They had King Henry VIII and King George. And so what he's basically telling them is, look, you're sliding back on freedom of speech and democracy and all the values that the Western civilization is supposed to hold dear since Aristotle and Socrates. Stop it. And America will continue to do it, even though we've gone through our bouts of censorship and all this terrible stuff that the FISA reports and all this spying. So we got our issues, but we don't have those issues. We're not arresting people for memes and comedy or seeing people killed like what was it, Van Gogh's nephew who was killed in Amsterdam. And Sweden is a no-go zone for most women because of the rapes that have just been outrageous because of this illegal immigration that Trump is now basically fighting against. So we're trying not to be like Europe. And again, we have the Federalist Papers. We have a First Amendment. We can go to court and defend ourselves from our free speech, even if people don't like it. So when they say it's a hate speech crime to put up a meme or repost a meme, J.D. Vance is doing the job of an American by saying, that is not the way you should be doing it. Stop it. It would be nice to see if at the end of the Trump era, Europe, the EU actually gets a Bill of Rights like a First Amendment. They'll never get a Second Amendment, but wouldn't it be amazing if they actually did have their own citizens' rights to free speech so that they can have the joys, and like you and I, the three of us are talking right now. You can't do that there if you say the wrong thing, but they will protect their guys who, had little boys in the back room in the past. I forget his name, Seville, right? So they're just messed up over there, and that's why America is so cool. I mean, I would take Australia and the prisoners that left England over what they currently have in running the place in London any day of the week.
Well, I'll tell you this. The most popular movie at this Munich Security Conference was The Crying Game. Here's the chairman.
After the speech of Vice President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. I'm very grateful to all those European politicians that spoke out and reaffirmed the values and principles that they are defending. No one did this better than President Zelensky. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
Someone give him a visual. Is he really crying over this? What do you think of men crying, you guys, on TV during the speech?
I haven't seen a German cry like that since 1945.
Here's what I'll say about that. Number one, that was his conclusion. He was retiring. So I could see that after 40-something years, okay, maybe a little bit of emotion. I get that. But his principles that he was talking about were exactly what I was talking about, that they stand against, whether it be censorship, whether it be draconian lockdowns for praying outside of a protest. They did that. All of these things that are so anti-Western civilization that they're actually loving because of the World Economic Forum, because of Klaus Schwab, all these things that they've bought into, whether they're determining what size a kumquat can be if you're going to sell it into the EU. And you mentioned the crying game. That's Ireland. Man, have they screwed this whole thing up. They used to be the bastion of rebellion to stand against liberty. And now they've just, they'll let you. It makes me sad, actually. The whiskey still flows, but that's a different story.
No, keep it flowing. We'll go to Scotland. They're a little, I don't think they cry over there. I don't think the men cry at all. I mean,
so that guy's just a Democrat, just a bureaucrat, just a tool of the collective that America stands against. And again, NATO is what's really at risk, because that's our really only alliance on the continent ever since the Marshall Plan. So if they're going to do this, and Trump's going to say, look, you got to pay for your own defense. We're leaving Ukraine because that's your deal. And of course, they tout out Zelensky as an example, just like they had Kamala Harris as an example. Both of them have one thing in common: not elected. Zelensky is not elected. He's technically a dictator right now. And Kamala Harris was not elected by the Democratic Party to be the candidate for the president. They selected her when Biden decided to step down after 18 million votes of his own party. So they are exactly the same thing. They're all appointed bureaucrats with absolutely no rights for the citizens in their targets, except the ones they want to take away.
Yep, absolutely. Chris, do we have time for one more? Come on, we've got Chris here on a roll.
We do. Before we close out here, I have one, Angie. This is the Who in the Hell is Teaching Our Kids department. This one brought out of South Carolina. Apparently, she's a teacher. Apparently, she's saying she doesn't want to have kids anymore, at least for a little while, and she's blaming Donald Trump. That's a good lesson for kids, but let's listen to her.
Last night, the conversation my fiance and I had before we went to bed was, if this happens, we won't be having kids. At least not in the next 4 years. We definitely can't have them in the state we live in now. I'm already a high risk, and
now, you're definitely a high risk. You're probably a high risk for some kind of psychotic event, but
but I don't understand it. Like, just like reproductive rights. Why can't she have children in South Carolina in the next 4 years? But she can. She later on goes on to say that she can have it in Maine. Like, what does that matter?
Well, it's ridiculous, because the kid will be 4 years in 4 years. And so there'll be a different president by then. So what exactly is it even talking about, unless he's saying like heterosexual relationships are in some kind of danger that I haven't been alerted to, except on the left. So yeah, she's crazy. There's another woman out there who said something to the fact that she's divorcing her husband. He doesn't believe it, but it's true. I just filed papers today because he booed Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl.
Oh boy.
And she's, I mean, people have Trump derangement syndrome still. It is not something that just went away. It is a chronic disease. I don't know what this woman is thinking, but if she's in the public education system, it's a pretty fair bet that she has been trained to be a lunatic and is trying to pass that trait on to children. So it's probably good if she doesn't procreate, maybe the next 40 years, but who knows?
Yeah, that'll be fine Darwinism, if you ask me.
That would be.
Well, I've said it for decades. If the far left continues with the LGBTQ plus thing, plus pro-choice, they're going to be extinct within a generation, and we're pretty close to that right at this point.
Good with that. Totally good with that. How do you guys deal with this kind of stuff? Like, would you, if you're dating this girl, you're like, okay, goodbye, never call me again. I mean, like, I'm so sorry. I apologize for like women like this, because we are a little, all of us, we're a little bit, from time
I've been
to
married
time.
for over 20 years. If I was in the dating scene and that was coming my way, I would certainly not return that phone call.
Yeah, has to go. There we go. No way. That's one you just run in the other direction.
Yeah. Speaking of have to go, we have to go soon. We got to wrap up episode 20 of Prime Roast. And we thank you, Steve. Please come back all the time. We love everyone in Tennessee, and we hope everyone's doing well. I know you guys have a cold spell over there right now, and a storm and all this other, snow and all that stuff coming your way. So stay dry, stay warm. and do a lot of sledding. Chris, always a pleasure to see you. And I love that everyone, you have to know that Chris is the one who prepares all these videos. He is the one finding materials left and right. So thank you again for making another great show here. And yeah, everyone hit that subscribe button, like our stuff, tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and tune in next Thursday for the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.